If you own stocks or even just have money in a 401k, what is happening right now between the Middle East and a small island off the coast of Florida could either make you extremely wealthy or wipe out nearly 40% of your money. What Walt is not telling you is that this is not really about oil. It is about the collapse of a 50-year system that has kept your dollar strong and valuable, and that is why everyone is suddenly focused on the Middle East and the news. The United States is making a move for Cuba's hidden mineral wealth, resources that most investors do not even realize exist. So here is my promise to you. By the end of this video, you will understand why Cuba, yes Cuba, holds some of the largest deposits in the world of the exact materials needed for the next 50 years of technology. And you will know which stocks to buy, which ones to sell, and how to position yourself for what I call the Great Reshoring, the largest wealth transfer still ahead. I am Dalio Marco Mind. I am a former investment banker, and I have seen from the inside as well as through the perspective of my Wall Street mentors how these cycles actually unfold. I am also the founder of the Good Academy, where my retired Wall Street mentors have taught more than 20,000 of you institutional level strategies. Let me walk you through the three-phase wealth transfer framework here. Phase 1, what is happening right now? The petrodollar system is dying. Phase 2, the Great Reshoring, where capital flows shift to new destinations. And Phase 3, the new resource rush, where you can position yourself ahead of the curve. And if you want to learn how to do this the same way Wall Street does, and we demonstrated it last year with gold miners, let me show you a few examples of what we bought last year. For instance, IAG, which we entered at 671, went up nearly 300% and is still up about 180% today. GAU, which we entered at 145, also rose around 150%. And SK, which we entered at 1175, is still up nearly 200%. I am not promising returns, but I am promising to show you exactly how we identify these opportunities. It is not luck and it is not hindsight. It is a structured framework, a set of rules that Wall Street has used for 50 years. And it is not taught to regular people like us unless we are extremely lucky and manage to land a job in a bank. All right, now to quickly help everyone understand, what exactly is the petrodollar? Let me give you a very simple explanation. In 1974, Saudi Arabia agreed to sell oil only in US dollars. Why did that matter? Because it meant that every country in the world had to buy and hold dollars. So then what happened? If you wanted to get dollars, you did not just buy physical cash because that does not earn you any return. Instead, you would buy U.S. government debt. And what was the result? An extremely massive demand for U.S. government debt was created. This allowed the United States to run huge deficits while the rest of the world was essentially financing it. So why is this system breaking down? Because other countries are now emerging and becoming more powerful. BRICS nations are trading in their local currencies, and the Middle East is also pushing countries to find alternative trade routes. This does not mean the dollar will disappear overnight, but its power and influence are gradually declining. Now the question is, why does this matter to you? It might sound a bit boring at first, but I am an economist. Apologies for that, but it is really important to understand this. What it means is that countries can sell U.S. Treasury bonds, which is just a fancy word for U.S. debt because they don't need as many dollars. So what happens then? Well, the prices of those bonds is debt, right? Fall. If the prices of bonds fall by some weird economic causation, interest rates go up. When interest rates go up, stock values drop, which is really all you care about, right? So the whole thing is about, well, it's going to harm stocks. And one thing I learned from one of my Wall Street mentors, worked in a bank for like 20 years. He said to me, look, currency shifts are what creates the biggest wealth transfers in history. So make sure you understand how Wall Street deals with this, because I tell you, we're going to make money out of this. The question is, will you has the last week or two for you been pleasant? And if it hasn't, then come and learn the skills to make it a lot more pleasant, which is really what the whole goal is here, right? So join us, Felix Org Training. Link is down below in the description. So what's going on with the U.S.? What's the big pivot here? They are doing something called friendshoring, and it's a strategy to bring supply chains closer to home. So the Middle East is being, allowed to destabilize, the like way of putting it, and the shift is the shift is sort of the U.S. has been this global policeman for, decades, and they're now moving more closer to home to like a regional, like a gatekeeper. Apologies, but it is really important to understand this. What this means is that countries can sell U.S. Treasury bonds, which is just a more formal way of saying U.S. government debt, because they no longer need as many dollars. So then what happens? The prices of those bonds fall, and bonds are essentially debt, right? When bond prices fall due to complex economic mechanisms, interest rates rise. When interest rates rise, stock values go down, and that is really the most important thing for you, isn't it? So the entire situation ultimately comes down to the fact that it can damage the stock market. And I learned from one of my Wall Street mentors who worked in a bank for almost 20 years. He told me, look, shifts in currencies create the biggest wealth transfers in history. Now, what is happening in the United States? What is the big turning point here? They are doing something called friendshoring, which is a strategy where supply chains are brought closer to home. What this means is that the Middle East is being allowed to become somewhat unstable. This is one way of putting it. And the United States is moving away from being a global policeman for decades and shifting into a more regional gatekeeper role. We saw Venezuela, right? After the regime change there, what happened? Energy access opened up. Venezuela has massive oil reserves, and it produces the same quality of oil that U.S. Gulf refineries are designed for. This creates energy independence for the United States. And in effect, the U.S. has now, believe it or not, become the largest oil exporter in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia. The United States has essentially become a kind of new Saudi Arabia. So who benefits from this? It benefits the U.S. because they are making huge amounts of dollars, money, and profit from selling all that oil. That oil does not necessarily have to come from within the U.S. It can come from Venezuela, but it is processed in the United States. Now the question is, why is Cuba suddenly being reported as the next target for the U.S.? What have they done? They have cut off Venezuela, which was Cuba's energy supplier. They have also cut off Iran, which was Cuba's financial supporter. So what happens if you bring regime change just 90 miles away from Cuba? And why would you want to do that? Cuba has massive mineral wealth and rare earth elements, and maybe this is new information for you. If this is new to you, write news in the comments so we can see how many people already knew this. But the world is changing, moving toward batteries, solar energy, and new technology. You see drones being used in wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. This is how wars are being fought now. All of this is powered by electricity, and electricity requires batteries. Now, what are the key materials for these batteries? Cobalt, nickel, rare earth elements, and copper. And interestingly, Cuba is the 5th largest supplier of cobalt in the world. It also has large amounts of nickel. It has many mineral reserves, even gold and silver. The problem is that the mines are not properly developed, and there has not been significant investment. These large Cuban reserves, which are among the biggest in the world, contain exactly the minerals needed for defense, electric vehicles, and technology. These are essentially untapped resources that could potentially bring Cuba back into economic strength. And when Cuba eventually opens up, who do you think will build the ports, mining, and energy infrastructure? Who do you think that will be? The same companies that will rebuild Venezuela, American companies. So as an investor, how can you benefit from this situation? How can you position yourself for it? Just don't go out and blindly start buying things. That's all I do. People always ask me, are you this type of investor or that type of trader? I simply say, I follow the money. What does that mean? Well, come and join me on Saturday and I'll teach you. But this is exactly how we identified those small mining opportunities, right? We entered below that blue line down there, and then at some point we also exited for a solid profit. But as a framework, conceptually, you should be looking at mining companies with Caribbean exposure. You should be looking at infrastructure and construction firms. You should also be looking at service companies connected to those sectors. However, identifying the exact industry and then the exact company goes far beyond what we can cover in a 15-minute video because, as I said, it takes me over an hour to teach it properly. But just think about that. You can learn that skill in just about an hour. Isn't that amazing? I think it's incredible. So come and learn it. But I do want to give you an action plan for right now. If you are heavily exposed to dollar-denominated assets, in my opinion, the dollar is going to lose a significant amount of value. If you are holding safe bonds, and you might not even realize it, maybe it's inside your 401k or something similar, you should take a closer look at that. Do you really want to own it? Because long-term bonds are likely going to get hit hard. This is my opinion. I am not a financial advisor or a registered investment advisor. I am simply a former banker and economist sharing what I learned from my mentors. But what is likely coming is a weaker US dollar, higher inflation, and a wave of opportunities emerging from the new technology world we are entering. So what should we do? We should be in hard assets because when currencies weaken or fail, hard assets tend to perform very well. What are hard assets? Gold is one example. There are also other essential metals needed for the world we are entering, data centers, AI, and everything else. And then you want to look at the entire Western Hemisphere opportunity. This reshoring trend has massive implications for people in the US, but also for companies heavily exposed to those previously low-cost countries where everything was manufactured. We are looking at infrastructure, we are looking at mining, and we are looking at supply chain opportunities across the Americas. And if that sounds offensive, I apologize. My Spanish accent is terrible, I admit that. But you see, most investors are watching the wrong thing. Right now, they are focused on the Middle East and thinking it is all about oil. But smart money is watching the Caribbean. And this shift is not something that starts tomorrow and ends next week. It will take 5 to 10 years to fully play out, and I believe early movers will capture the biggest gains. We saw it with gold stocks. Where did the interest begin? Early last summer, and then they went up nearly 200%. We see the same pattern in the silver chart. When volume starts to spike at the bottom, that is when you are supposed to pay attention. But of course, you probably didn't because nobody ever taught you, which is extremely unfair. And we are going to fix that if you join me live. We went up 213% in 140 trading days, and that was not a coincidence. That was money flowing into silver, and it almost does not matter why it is happening. As long as you understand where the money is moving, that is all you need to see the opportunity. Then you can become curious about the reasons later. But those who bought early captured that massive 200% gain. What about those who bought when everyone was talking about it in the media? They bought somewhere around the top. And what are they looking at now? A red portfolio. Could this have been avoided? I believe so, yes. I will teach you the exact rules and frameworks that make it avoidable for me, in my opinion. But either way, the wealth transfer has already begun and it is very real. Most people ignore it completely. The reality is that the value of your money is decreasing and what you can buy with it is shrinking week by week. If you are in safe investments or holding cash while waiting for the market to do something, then you are effectively falling behind. If you rely on a salary, you lose. If you rely on savings, you lose. If you have a fixed pension, you lose. It sounds harsh and it is unfair, but on the other hand, some people are making a lot of money. Why? Because asset prices are rising faster than the dollar is falling. So now you have a choice. Do you want to be among those who complain, get frustrated, and get distracted by politics and noise, or do you want to join the winners? If you cannot beat them, join them, right? And who are the winners? The wealthy Wall Street and those who have learned how to move money into the right assets. In my view, asset prices are going to significantly outpace the decline in the dollar. So change is always an opportunity if you understand the direction it is moving in. If you take only one thing from this, let it be this: become an asset owner, but the right kind of asset owner. And for that, join me on Saturday at Felix.org training. I am not promising you returns. That is not what we do. I never make such promises. What I can do is teach you the rules and frameworks that Wall Street has used for 50 years. Because the real issue is that financial education does not really exist for most people. But think about how banks operate. How do they make money every year? How do they remain profitable for decades? Yes, there are bailouts and excesses in some cases, but those are exceptions. Most years, they are profitable. Look at reports from JP Morgan, for example. They make billions every quarter from investing and trading. Those people do not go to work every day thinking, what should we look for today? No, they have a framework, they have rules, and they follow them strictly because that is how you scale a business like a bank. And when you are employed by a bank, you are taught those rules. I will teach you those rules. Join me on Saturday at 8 p.m. New York time. If you found value in this, share it with someone else and share the training link as well. Let's educate everyone together. I wish you all the best. Did you know there is an invisible system that controls nearly every trade on the planet? And I am not talking about supply and demand. I am not talking about the Federal Reserve. And I am not even talking about the